Let's turn now to Mark Harmsworth, our Center Director for Small Business. Mark has been watching the new tax for services coming up. Mark, you want to tell us, first of all, what's the significance of, I think it's tomorrow, right, for October 1st, for a lot of Washington services?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can hear me okay, Dave?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so the legislature earlier this year passed a whole bunch of, well, technically they passed a removal of exemptions, but they added some new categories in there, and I'll just list them off here. So if you're in the advertising services business, live presentations, whatever that may, I mean, I guess if you're that Tony fella that does all the encouragement stuff, information technology services, custom website development, investigative security, and armored car services. So if you're a movie star, you'll be paying more. Temporary, and I know everyone on this call is a movie star. Temporary staffing services and sales of custom software and customization of pre-written software. A couple other exclusions that have been removed. Services involving primarily human effort, which is vastly wide and very, very scary, because if anybody's gone through an audit with the Department of Revenue before, they know that they will classify pretty much whatever they want. And I'll give you a quick horror story on this. When I was a legislator, a business owner approached me. He was a carpet cleaner, and he'd been cleaning carpets for 20 years. And the Department of Revenue came in and reclassified a lot of the work that he'd been doing as damage cleanup and applied sales tax to him, backing up 20 years, and it literally bankrupted him. They did this in 2008. And so vague definitions like this just scare the bejeebers out of any business owner who's trying to follow the rules, but can end up in a situation where they unwittingly don't collect the sales tax. 'Cause you can't go back to these customers and say, "Hey, sorry, I forgot to charge you sales tax 20 years ago. Can you pay me $2,000, please?" It just doesn't work. You have to collect it at the point of sale, and so otherwise you're on the hook for it. And so these types of rules are extremely scary. Now, a lot of the stuff that they've implemented for tomorrow, it's going to hurt a lot of different businesses that were not applying sales tax before. It also makes the environment very much more difficult to comply with, particularly if you're doing a lot of remote work. If there's no nexus, and by nexus, what I mean there is that there's a sales tax. If you enter a jurisdiction and you do work in that jurisdiction, you're subject to the sales tax of that jurisdiction. And there's sales tax rates, as you may know, for pretty much every single jurisdiction in the state. So there's hundreds of them. So you have to figure that out. And now what they've done is added more complexity so that you have to figure out, is this a sales taxable event or not? And so then you apply different rate or no rate. And then if you do remote work, like you'll phone some help in maybe for somebody, particularly involving human effort, which again is very, very vague, you could end up paying the wrong sales tax rate because you applied the rate of the city you were calling into instead of the rate where you're physically residing when you perform the service. Very difficult, very onerous. And as our previous speaker talked about, it makes it incredibly difficult for new business owners starting up because now they've got to think about this stuff and apply these rules correctly. Otherwise, they can get in trouble. And a more established business, they kind of got this figured out at this point, and it's just an extra amount of work that they're going to have to do. Still bad, but it's an unfunded mandate, but they have to go through that. But for small business owners, incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking with some advertiser friends that were really upset by this tax because it was going to hit a lot of their business and their clientele. And people hear advertisements and think, "Wow, they must be really great." But from my own experience in broadcasting, that was not uncommon for me to meet new business people who were starting off who had achieved a certain level of success, and then they were betting it all on advertising in order to go to that next level. So they were taking their savings, and I remember feeling really burdened by it to make sure that they were successful because, I'd hear, them, they're about to plop down, 30, 40, 50,000, even 100,000 on advertising. And, and that was all their risk. They were putting everything into that risk for themselves. And so, when people think, oh, new tax on this, that's just who, what services they can afford it. A lot of times these guys they're on a tight margin and they're on the brink and they're betting on themselves because they think with a little bit extra they'll make it, and this is an extra burden on them that they don't need. So.
Yeah, so let's say you're $1 million business, which sounds like a large amount of money for an individual, but let's say you are $1 million business and your profit margin is 10%, and currently, yeah, and you're a service industry, and currently you're not charging sales tax. So tomorrow you have to start charging sales tax on the services you provide if you're in one of these categories. And so do you pass that? In the case of many jurisdictions, 10% cost. Let's say your profit is 10%, so you're making 100,000 a year in profit, which you use to plow into advertising or whatever. And now the state comes in and says, no, we want $100,000 from you a year. Do you increase your prices by 10%? And if you were planning on maybe doing a modest 3 or 4% increase to cover the carbon tax or the increased gas taxes or the increase in B&O taxes, now you're looking at a 13% increase in your customers. Do you think your customers are going to go, oh, well, we're going to go look someplace else and see if we can get it cheaper? Well, of course they are. So you're putting all these businesses at risk. And on top of that, you're eating into that. And that's not to say you increase, but let's say you eat the cost, your profit's gone. So as a small business owner starting out 1 or 2 years in, maybe you're making $100,000, your profit's 10,000. Now the state wants all of it. It's incredible that they think this is going to even help our economy, and I think you will see a lot of very young businesses just fold up and go home.
Well, this actually brings up some of the rhetoric about the new state revenue projections. I shouldn't say, I mean, there's new projections showing the budget, even though they shattered all previous tax increase records, that's still not enough money to cover what they've already spent, what they're already spending. And, a lot of that is because they did things with one-time revenue, giving raises to state employees or others that are obviously that's an ongoing expense. If you give somebody a raise, that doesn't go away just because COVID money went away, right? That's going to stick around. And I think a lot of that was by design because, you give the raises, you get all the political credit for giving a raise, and then you can wait a little while, and then, whoa, you can throw up your hands and go, wow, I wish we didn't have this big deficit, but I guess we do. And now you guys are going to have to cover it. It's a negative way of budgeting. It's irresponsible, but it has it makes sense politically. I can understand it because people don't pay that close of attention. It's one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up. But I just wanted your take, Mark, as a former legislator, somebody who's followed this issue really carefully. You see what the projections are. You see what our situation is. How is it shaping up? First of all, is the problem less than we should expect, or should we expect to see a growing problem in this direction for Washington coming up into the legislative session?
Yeah, think of it like your own home budget. If you budgeted to the maximum every single year, you said, we're going to spend all this money, I'm going to go buy a new car, going to do all this kind of stuff, and then your income fell for whatever reason, maybe a family member lost a job or you had to change jobs, you weren't earning as much money, suddenly you got the shortfall. You'd never budget like that. You want to budget and give yourself a little bit of margin. In this case, and I would call this political expediency, but administrative malfeasance. Say that quickly. You end up in a situation here. What they've done is just a few months ago they maxed the credit cards by coming to us and saying, "Hey, we've got this massive tax increase, the largest in history." And they knew 3 months ago they could have projected if the revenue numbers drop even by a small amount, we're going to be in a complete mess. And that's exactly where they're at. They're looking at $1 billion shortfall already, or close to it. Excuse me. And it just seems so amateurish by the state legislators that voted for this that they would think they wouldn't end up in this situation, knowing what's going on at the federal level as well, knowing that they were not going to comply with some of the Trump administration's rules. And so there was a revenue risk there. They never really sat down and did this. So looking at this from a leadership perspective, this is not leadership. This is just, I'm gonna go max my credit card and hope I don't have to make the payments tomorrow. And unfortunately, it came due. And you've seen here not just the one-time revenues. We're seeing that the majority of that money that they took as well, and that the increases they put through are going to increases in salary. But you're also seeing things, and this is a thing the legislature does all the time. They'll pass programs or they create programs where we call it a bow wave, where they'll pass it in 2024, and then in 2026 is when the thing actually starts. And so that's when the revenue is due. And so they knew ahead of time there were programs that they could potentially have to end up paying for because of these types of things. And so you see this happen also, not just new programs, but the delay of collection of taxes as well that they're projecting. That can cause a lot of different problems as well. So this is just this is foolishness what they're doing at this point. It is. I just don't understand why these legislators are projecting this, just hoping, like you're saying, that we're just going to turn around and pay them more money, and they're taxing the small businesses who generate the revenue at the end of the day for the state to a point where that revenue is going to go away. And the more we just talked about these sales tax increases, um, there comes a point where the businesses don't exist. You can't tax a bankrupt business; it doesn't happen. So I think that have they jumped the shark? Probably yes already to coin the Fonzie show. But um, uh, the 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 direction they're going here, they've got to take a step back. They've got to make cuts, otherwise they're just going to compound this and make it worse.
I feel bad saying this just because with our previous guest, I was saying, can't we just set federal debates aside for a moment, right? But since you brought up the fact that, some of this deals with federal money that was a one-time grant, and there's other things going on with the federal government, with some quote unquote cuts. I even hate to use that term because so much money is being spent, but I look at it and I think, okay, just from a nonpartisan point of view, it's undeniable that the federal government keeps spending trillions more than we bring in. At some point, as a state, you have to recognize that that won't last. It can't last forever. That party will end unless the economy grows so much that spending becomes much smaller. And I don't, I wish I could see that happening, but the level is so great in terms of overspending that relying on federal dollars seems to me to be a fool's game in the long term anyway. For anybody who's being honest about that, I know nobody's thinking about that by and large. I don't think a lot of people, it's kind of like the housing bust that took place in 2009, where everybody's getting a house. It's like Oprah out there. You get a house, you get a house, you get a house. Zero money down. Everybody's going to get a house, and then suddenly disaster strikes. I feel there's a bit of that with the federal spending levels, where people say, well, gosh, this is outrageous. After all, the federal government should be paying for this. And I keep thinking, at some point, the federal government's going to, they could keep printing the money. That doesn't mean it's going to be worth as much. So we're seeing some of that with inflation now.
Right.
You don't have to comment on it. Just my rant. Whenever I hear people say, oh, I think the federal government should pay for that, I'm thinking,
Oh. If
what?
like you asked earlier, if you put me in charge, I would budget assuming that money was not going to be there, and I would budget a very conservative growth and not even assume it was always going to continue. And then at the end of the year, you're surprised because you've got good operational revenue and you're able to rebuild the rainy day fund, which they raided this year to make the numbers match up for them. But you budget like that, like you would do in your household, and then you can weather the times when things go bad. The legislature at the moment, it just assumes that we're going to continue growing at the rate we've been going, and it's the chickens come home to roost here.
Difficult. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Mark. I want to remind people too that our Eastern Washington annual dinner is coming up on October 10th. You can get all the details at wpcdinner.com. I alluded to, if you're in the Spokane area, you saw the show, you've never been to the dinner before and you're thinking about it, why don't you send me an email, dbose@washingtonpolicy.org, and maybe we can work out something, because I always have I've got a plus I've got some plus tickets. Maybe I can arrange something to bring you into the fold, so to speak. But I want people to know that we need more. We need a united voice in Washington for government accountability, for free enterprise principles, to grow our economy, and to engage with prosperity, and to take a look. Part of accountability too is taking a look at other policies. And we're going to have an update on Spokane's homeless issue when we're in Spokane on October 10th. We had Dr. Robert Marbut as a speaker last year. He presented with William Baldwin. So you had, the czar under the homelessness czar under the first Trump administration, and for a couple of months under the Biden administration, speaking with the Hollywood liberal, Billy Baldwin, and agreeing, 100% together on this nonpartisan problem where you've got addicted people wasting their lives, and the decay of public spaces, and you've got the indignity of street life, and all the crime and other things that come with it, and tackling these problems. Dr. Marbut's been investigating and looking into and analyzing the Spokane area. He's going to provide an update on that and what some of the solutions are for Spokane. He's done a terrific analysis of that problem. We'll hear from him on that, among other things. So very valuable. And again, it doesn't matter. It's not about party, it's about policy. So take a look at that. And I'd urge you to think about that, wpcdinner.com. And, look, those kinds of dinners aren't for everybody. There's lots of ways to get involved with Washington Policy Center. You can go on to our website and become a member and learn more about us there as well. And be sure to encourage your friends too. I do this all the time, Mark. I don't know about you, but I'll tell people, they'll say, well, gosh, I never heard that before about the report card for Washington's future. People need to know about this. And I say, have you shared it with your friends? There's this silence like, I didn't think about that. Well, telling you now, share it with your friends, share it with people who would value that information and should have it, need it shared by you. Because
this is thing called Twitter or X.
Yeah,
just throwing it out there.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can choose the platform for yourself and then share it, and then spark that debate about it. And we'd encourage you to do so. So again, Mark, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks with another Washington. Well, wait a second. In 2 weeks, it'll be the annual dinner. Will probably be preempted in 2 weeks. That's likely because we'll be gearing up for Spokane. But if I possibly can, we'll do it in 2 weeks. Otherwise, it'll be the week after. So, but check out your events, watch your emails. We'll alert you to the next Washington Policy on the go coming up, and you can watch this full episode on our YouTube channel as well. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a great day.
If you found this informative, share it with a friend, and consider checking out one of our suggested videos over here. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can stay up to date with the latest policy news from Washington.